Hello, hello, everybody. We are here for the Tuesday Night Live. This week we're going to be talking about conspiracies, the collapse of Hollywood, the Illuminati, your favorite celebrity conspiracy theories. And we ended up on this topic because every Tuesday I do a vote on my Instagram poll. And this is what on my Instagram stories you've decided on. So last week, you guys wanted to talk about 5D, the new Earth ascension. Now, as we were talking about yesterday, we cannot ascend without descending first. Okay. So we're going to talk about conspiracies. We're going to talk a little bit about selling your soul. We're going to talk about demons, satanic rituals. We're going to use this code word of PDF file cults, rites of passage, the power of sexual energy and creation within all of this stuff, the downfall of Hollywood, and the soul contracts that we have with celebrities. Now, you guys know when you come here, we're not going to do the 101. Now, I'll make my little statements, my little things, and then I would love to answer some questions if you guys have it. You know, if you guys want to ask about specific conspiracies, specific celebrity things, then I'm open to answering that after. But first, I'm not going to give you the cookie cutter stuff. So let's start off with talking about conspiracies in general. As you guys know, I'm a lifelong conspiracy theorist. I went down these rabbit holes a long time ago, over 10 years ago. I kind of, there's a spiritual psychosis, there's a conspiracy psychosis. Okay. So I've been there, I've done it, I've lived it. So I'm actually a great person to talk about this topic because the more and more that you learn, like that philosopher says, the more I learn, the less I know. And when people are so certain about the things that they know, it's because they are lacking the full scope of information. So, I'm going to come to this with a much more balanced, expanded perspective than I would have years ago or a decade ago. So, let's first talk about conspiracies because conspiracies, I want to give this little disclaimer and not your regular vanilla disclaimer of misinformation shit. The disclaimer of conspiracies can be almost like a drug, right? Because to have your mind blown is almost like a psychedelic experience. You take mushrooms or something and it blows your mind, you can chase that feeling again, right? Conspiracies have the ability to do the same thing where it can take the world that you're looking at and blast it open to a new level. And then what happens when we go to that new level is you start searching for that high. So it's very important to remember that when you start getting into conspiracies and stuff, for you to be very mindful of it is addictive like a drug. Okay. Like it is a high. It is an adrenaline rush. It is a mind fuck. It's a brain bender. So what happens a lot of times with conspiracies, and I know because I experienced this, that you can really like push your own limits more and more and get addicted to that high from it. So I like to say that as a disclaimer, as somebody who has gone through all of these things. I mean, I've talked about the time I really saw a reptilian, okay? And then the time I was wigged out and thought I saw a reptilian. By wigged out, I mean I was too far down too many rabbit holes and I thought that these two homeless people were reptilians. That's different than the time I actually saw one, okay? So all things are possible. All things are true within the scope of consciousness, right? So I want to start with that. Also, when it comes to some of these conspiracies and whatnot, I also have a little bit of a more expanded perception than I used to. So let's talk about the selling your soul stuff. Now, originally, I did believe that there was a selling of a soul happening. And for many years, I believed that. I believed that celebrities have to basically sell their soul and maybe allow some type of force, some type of entity, some type of uh, something maybe even bigger than just like one entity, like maybe some type of collective energy or something to go within them and to use their body as a vessel for its tools. Now, as my own consciousness has expanded, I have a different perspective. I went through a really dark shadow work journey last year myself, and that really gave me like an even deeper perspective on all of this stuff. And I know I sound like a broken record because I've said it so many times on so many different topics. Hi, everybody. Hi on TikTok. And so when I talk about that, I'll give this example once again. When we're born, we are a 360 personality. We are a whole person, right? When we come here as a baby, we're not thinking, oh, I'm too smelly and gross to be loved. There's shit in my diaper. I'm not worthy of love. Oh, I'm not worthy of food. No, a baby is born just inherently feeling worthy of these things. And then could start on day one, could start before day one, or it could start at age 7, age 14, age whatever, that those things start to be diminished. Life starts to come at you. Life starts to say, oh, wait, I should shut up. Or, oh, my opinion's not important. Or it's better if I'm quiet. It's better if I'm careful around my parents. Maybe I don't want to upset them. I don't want their mood to go in this direction. Or, oh no, it's not safe when they do this. And what happens is this beautiful 360 personality that is like straight from God, straight from source, starts to diminish. It starts to become more narrow and more narrow. And we say, oh no, that part of myself that is fully expressive has to go away. That part of myself that is this needs to go away. That part of myself that is this needs to go away. And slowly the 360 becomes more narrow and narrow and narrow until eventually we are on this very tiny, narrow path, which is what we believe as our personality, as our identity, as who we are. And those parts of ourself that get exiled, there's many different concepts of what happens to them, but it's almost like we are part of, even within ourselves, right? God is the whole, source is the whole, the universe is the whole. And when we send these parts away from ourselves with judgment, then we get further and further away from that. But these other parts of ourselves still exist. We just don't allow them to come out. We just don't allow them to be. So my perception on demons is really that it's those parts of yourself that have been exiled. And then what happens? Like, let's say you have a child that has been locked away in a cage for 10 years. It's not going to come out as a sweet little 10-year-old. It's going to come out super feral, vicious, angry, fighting for its life, for survival. And then that's what's happening to those parts of ourself. It's having that same experience as, you find an animal that has been abused on the side of the road. That animal is barking at you, trying to bite you, doing anything to protect itself. It's not until it can be loved, it can be integrated back and be shown safety, that then it could become part of, the whole, the good part of the self again. But this is what's happening with celebrities. So I give that little bit of a precursor because this is what I believe is happening with the selling your soul stuff. I do not believe, I used to believe, but I no longer believe that a soul could be sold. Who the hell is buying a soul, right? You can't sell a soul. That doesn't even actually make sense. The more that you understand about consciousness, the more that you understand about the universe, the more you understand about God, who the hell is going to buy a soul? All the souls come from the same place, belong to the same place, go back to the same place. There is only one. There is one giant soul, which is the universe, which is God, which is source, which is the one. And we are just fragments of that. So when we see this as above, so below concept, and like I said, we were going to talk about conspiracies, but we're going to get intellectual and esoteric with it because, I'm not going to give you that 101 basic shit. Okay. There's plenty of places to go get that. And so that's even what happens within God, right? God was one, God was whole. And then God said, I want to learn about this part of myself. I want to learn about the self of my part of myself, which is light, which is forgiving. Okay, well, now to learn about forgiving, I have to have something to forgive. I want to learn about the side of myself that is good. Well, I guess I'm going to learn about that by looking at the side of myself that can be bad. I want to learn about the side of myself that can be supportive and loving. Well, I want to be then I have to see the part of myself which is greedy and hateful. And God fractalized in that same way, as above, so below, is the same way that we are fractalizing on this level within ourself. But these fractalizations within ourself almost become the good and evil within the world, right? And for most of us, that evil side, that bad side is very, very, very shunned away. And maybe it's not very strong. Maybe it doesn't need to be very strong. It might not be very strong for people. It might not be as strong as the part that is good, or the part that is forgiving, or the part that is compassionate. But the part that is greedy, that is judgmental, that is hateful, it still exists within us. It all exists within us. It all exists within creation. So a lot of these celebrities have this fractalization happening, and a lot of these people have extreme trauma. So when you have extreme trauma, it really fractalizes these things, like almost to the point that those parts of yourself are not just exiled, are not just told to shut up, are not just told to go away. Those parts of yourself actually get stuck in a loop, in a time loop of trauma, where they just continuously are experiencing that and becoming more and more entrenched in that. So, let's use Diddy or something, for example, right? Because that's kind of like the mainstream hot conspiracy of the moment. So let's say someone like P Diddy, who obviously he's in jail right now for all of these sexual crimes and trafficking people and substances and all of these things, and abuse of women and everything. Okay, he's done all the things, right? And so, but then we go back and we go, there was once a time where Diddy was a child. And this child was most likely abused at some point, right? Because to go to this level, when we look at it from a compassionate side, not just a good and evil, God and Satan battle of light and dark way, when we look at a way, this was once a sweet child that came in here with a 360 personality as well, who felt deserving of love, who felt deserving of these things. And something happened, and maybe something else, and something else, and something else, and something else, which then fractalized this person to the point. Now, this is sometimes like, we all have many parts within us, but sometimes those parts within us can become so far from each other and so extreme that it can become almost like a split personality. Oh, it was lovely seeing you at the expo. Oh, you too. So what happens is then, especially when it comes to sexual traumas, that part of the self that has been exiled through trauma, that is living in a loop, becomes that feral child, becomes that wounded animal that is barking at you because it's afraid. And, so then that other part of the self can take the driver's seat sometimes, especially when drugs are involved, especially when drinking is involved. The other parts of the self can take the front row. And that little narrow part of you that has become your personality can be clogged by the other part of the self. So this is what I believe to be what's happening with demons. And what appears to be selling the soul is actually these other fragments of the soul that are so wounded, taking the front seat, taking the driver's seat, and taking control. So then what happens in Hollywood? What happens with the celebrities and stuff? Now, we also know a God-given talent. Someone like a Justin Bieber, Britney Spears, Whitney Houston, like someone who is a God-given talent. Now, musical talent especially, but all talents, but we'll talk about musical talent because it is, I think, a bit more, even more concentrated, because with musical talent, the person is fully like the product. Whereas like in movies, the actor is playing one part, the writer is playing a part, the director is playing a part. There's many different artists that are coming together to bring the finished product. Not to say that there's not other people that don't go into music. Obviously, there's producers and there's things like that, and there's a lot of other parts. But the person who is a star, that's what we're talking about. Madonna, Lady Gaga, Beyonce, these people, the star, that is a God-given talent. That is a God-given talent that is straight from source, right? First of all, music alone is incredible, right? Because a person who is musically gifted is able to pull from the ether and bring it into the physical. And then other people get to experience these waves of vibrations and frequencies, which then go into them and cause them to feel all of these things and to have like an even more intensified human experience. So like music is magic, right? Now, people who are these musical gifted stars, Hollywood and all of that, they're pulling this from the ether, using themselves as the vessel and transmitting this frequency that then like amplifies the human experience. And that is God, right? That is source. That is the universe. That is like something that is so incredible. Now, Hollywood in general, right? It's like this whole grab for money, for valuables, for riches, for property, for fame, for attention, for everything that is valuable, right? For everything that can make you feel something, for everything that can make you feel something very heightened, for anything that you could get a grasp onto that regular people don't have, that proves I'm better than other people or I'm superior to other people. So when it comes to that, this God-given talent like a Justin Bieber, a Britney Spears, a XYZ, all the people, right? All the stars that we know. Imagine how valuable that is to these greedy, hungry people who have an insatiable need for value, an insatiable need for something that nobody else has, an insatiable need for, if they're searching for the cars, the homes, the purses, the diamonds, of course, then Rihanna comes in, Beyonce comes in, and it's like, whoa, that is like one of the most valuable things. It's the gift straight from God. Now, these people, these major celebrities like that, these major A-list God-given talents, whether you like them or not, I'm not really the biggest fan of pop music. I like that new Lady Gaga song. I can't get that shit out of my head. But aside from that, I don't care for it. I listen to like metal and stuff. Okay. But regardless, it's undeniable what these people are, right? It's what are your thoughts on if that's not from God but from Lucifer because he's an angel of music? Okay, beautiful. Well, I'm going to write it down. We'll talk about Lucifer. I have a lot to say about Lucifer. Okay. So this God-given talent comes down here on earth, comes into this beautiful vessel, this gift straight from source, and then these middlemen who have a void within themselves, these managers, these agents, these middlemen, these handlers, these producers, these people who don't have that gift, but are so greedy for the most values in the world. Then they're like, I need that. I need that for me. How do I anchor that? How do I get that? And what they do then is because that person themselves, each person, right, everybody is a child of God. Everybody is wounded in a way. Some people are severely wounded. So then people who are more severely wounded have a more insatiable need to fill, a bigger void to fill at times. If they don't do the work, not to say everybody that has really terrible wounds, but if they don't do the work that needs to be done, that's a void, a hole, a bottomless pit within them, which is why like it's not just enough to, oh, wow, I did this thing and people liked it. It's like, oh, I did this thing and millions of people liked it and I was the best-selling artist and it's still not enough. I need to go more. I need to buy all the houses. I need to do all of this. I need 30 platinum albums. I need this. I need this. And it's this insatiable need that can't be fulfilled because the wound is so bad. The wound is so deep. The pit is so deep and so dark and cannot be filled. It's like a void. So then we have all these middle people who don't have that gift, who have this void within them that are like, oh, Justin Bieber, uh, Britney Spears, they want that for them. But how do they get that? Right? Also, these people who are like the Britney Spears and stuff like that, that is their destiny, right? Them becoming that was not by accident. That is their destiny. There's a reason why they have that gift. They were meant to share that gift with the world, just like all of us are meant to share our gifts with the world. So that gift, it is their destiny. So these middlemen, these people with this insatiable desire for taking what is valuable to fulfill something within themselves, try to hook into that person and, ride their coattails, but even more so to control them, to own them. Because it's not just like, oh, I want to go to the beautiful house. I want to own the beautiful house. I want all the art in the house. I want all the gems in the house. I want all of this in the house. So it's this, they want to own it. They want to take it for themselves. So what they do, they can see that this is this person's destiny because it's It's inevitable. You meet someone who's a star, you know they're a star, right? Unless there's something wrong with you. But you meet somebody who like, oh, that person is special. It's obvious to most people when somebody is special. We're all special, but there are people who they have the gift that they're meant to be Beyonce, right? And so they want to hook into that energy. And then what do? They have this insatiable need within them. They have these wounds within them. They've had these fractalized part of the self. They have the demons, which are the exiled parts, which take the front stage. And then what happens then is like, now there's a rite of passage, right? So in order to hook into this person, into their energy, into their gift, into that source that is flowing through them. And especially too, this is also why they're so obsessed with them being young. This is why all of those people that I mentioned were like minors when they started, right? Like all of them were so young when they started and so pure. And then basically that person is like, oh, in order for me to be hooked into this person, I must be between them and their destiny. This is like the Clive Davises of the world, right? So like someone like a Clive Davis who got Diddy, and then Diddy became that. So it's like a rite of passage. It's like, oh, this person's destiny, I have to insert myself into that equation between them and their destiny so that I can ride the wave of this gift. And then what they do with that is then where a lot of the sexual trauma comes in, right? Because their demons are running the show. Their demons are playing out the fucked up things and taking the lead. And then it becomes this normalized rite of passage where the powerful person hooks into that person's energy through some type of abuse, some type of taking something from them sexually, energetically, all of these things. And then that person, if they want to go to the next level, will hook into another person's energy because that insatiable pit within them is now a void, you know? So is this a satanic ritual? Right? This is kind of what people talk about, you know? And like I said, I'm not going to give you the 101 explanation of this stuff. For me, I'm like, this is like, you look at this bigger perspective of it, and it's like, this becomes a cycle. Like everything becomes a cycle, right? The cycle of abuse is, you know, like one of the easiest examples of like the cycle of abuse is like someone abuses their child. That little boy grows up and is a father, abuses his wife. The wife hits the kid because it's less powerful than her. The kid hits the dog, right? The dog bites another dog, right? Because this is the cycle of abuse until somebody stops it. Is that people then continue to that demon in them, that exiled part of themselves gets like it out by taking advantage of something weaker until somebody breaks that cycle, until somebody heals that, until somebody makes the decision of, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to be a part of this anymore. And this is what happens with the molestation, the abuse, the PDF files, the code word. I mean, I already said all of the other ones, but you know, I already know that the restrictions coming on TikTok. It's fine. And so all of those, that cycle is then that wound is exiled. Oh no, this bad thing happened to me. I exiled it. Then that exiled self has different ways to play out. Is it going to play out overused? You said, stop calling it a demon. It's overused. Cecilia, please pay attention. We're explaining them. Please. I'm explaining what it is. It's pay attention, hun, please. Where else am I streaming? I'm streaming on YouTube. So otherwise, this cycle will continue to go, right? So when it comes down to this kind of selling the soul concept, it's really allowing that exiled part of yourself, that banished part of yourself, that part of yourself that is wounded, that is unloved, that is that feral child, that is that, you know, wounded self, to take the front seat. Now, is there like entities involved? Now, there probably is entities involved, you know, but I would not blame the entities for what's happening. What's happening is a part of the human condition, but there might be opportunistic energies that want to feed on that. There might be opportunistic things that are hooking into that because it's very heightened, right? Something like extreme trauma is very heightened energy, right? Something like a God-given talent is a very heightened energy. Something like coveting something that is very valuable is a heightened energy. So, of course, there's probably energies that are around that are opportunistic, that are feeding on those moments. However, I would not blame those things. What's happening is within the self, right? And then we look of the as above, so below concept. So this is what's happening within God as well. What's happening within us is what's happening within God, because God is everything. God is the universe. God is source, this whole thing that we're a part of, and we're the little fragments of it. So there's a part of God that is you, and there's a part of God that is Bill Gates. There's a part of you or your best friend, your confidant, your spouse that is God. But then there's a part that is, Kanye West. There's a part that is all of these things. And those can exist within us as well. Oh, thanks, Joan. Thanks for your presence and being present. Such a beautiful song. Oh, thanks. You said you were highly abused as a child and completely understand this and the chain reaction. It becomes an egregore, a collective energy. Yes, it does become a collective energy. And maybe it's something that has already existed that then becomes opportunistic. Okay, so let's talk about Lucifer, because Lucifer keeps coming up in the comments here. And okay, I have a fascination with the concept of Lucifer. I have been, since I found out about the Urantia book, which I know could be a little controversial, but listen, whatever it is, what it is. There's good and bad with everything. And so there is a part of the Urantia book which talks about the Lucifer rebellion. And it's very similar to the story of the Bible, but a little bit different in the sense that, like, Lucifer was kind of like God's favorite angel in a way, like this most beautiful, gifted, musically gifted, uh, magnificent angel, who then, the story in the Bible is that then he gets jealous of God's creation and then wants to do those things himself, and basically falls, lowers himself. He's at this high vibration and then lowers himself to then be able to experience the things that God's lower creations were able to experience. So when you start really getting into like the Lucifer concept, though, obviously we know Lucifer means luz is light, like in Spanish and in Latin, luz, light. And then it's the light bringer. It's the morning star. And so I believe that, oh, thanks, Julie. Thanks for being a grounding light in this crazy world. You always seem to touch on everything I need to hear. Oh, thanks, Julie. You're a sweetheart. Right. And exactly, Frida. We all come from one point. So God is Lucifer. Exactly. So when we have this a concept of Lucifer being God's favorite angel and then falling to this level of existence where then he's able to do these things that were not possible at those higher levels, this is a part of God which wanted to experience the lower realms and dropped itself to the frequency to be able to be a place where there's hate, where there's anger, where there's pain, where there's sadness. It needed to drop itself to that level. Now, I have talked about it in one of my previous lives, and I did a TikTok on it with kind of like the 3 Abrahamic religions. And now, they have this devil concept in Christianity. And then there are these things in other Abrahamic religions. What's interesting is now I know a lot of like the different denominations, well, maybe not denominations, I don't know what it's called in Judaism, but these different facets, different temples might have slightly different interpretations, but kind of, you know, what I've seen as like the overall general most common thing is that this concept of like Satan or Lucifer is actually like almost like a prosecutor in God's court. So it's like, this is like someone that works in God's court of judgment, you know? And so then we have other things too. We have other things. So in the Pleiadian Agenda by Barbara Handclough, she channels Lucifer in the book. And she says that he lives in the 6th dimension. Take it or leave it. Take this all or leave it. The whole thing, actually. But he lives in the 6th dimension, and that he's actually stuck there because of our relation to him. So because we are pulling him, they, you know, whatever you want to call it, pulling Lucifer into our reality with these stories of light and dark, of the devil, of his story, of his soul, he's bound from ascending anymore. That those stories are like his old lesson. It's kind of like your parent still talking about some stupid thing that you did when you were 5 years old and bringing it up every time you're home and bringing it up all the time. And it's like, you cannot escape this story of what happened when you were 5 years old. And now you're 55 years old and you cannot escape this old story that continues to be anchored into the reality because of other people. So that's kind of like what it said in this channeled message, that like Lucifer has already gone through many stages of learning because that was so long ago, but that this soul is still so stuck and intertwined with us because of us pulling it here, kind of coming also back to like the egregore topic, kind of like we're almost like creating it. Now, then there's also a concept that is called the Lucifer experiment. It's very similar to the rebellion, but the experiment is more so the concept that Lucifer did this to serve God. That basically because he was this amazing angel and such a servant of God, that he said, if God wants to experience itself, then please let me create something that allows God to experience this part of itself, and was a creator of that. Now, I do believe that angels, archangels, higher angels are creators of realities. You know, I believe that there is one source, and when source divided from one into two of duality, that became the game of this universe. And then that duality split from 3 to 4 instantly. And then those 4 become the 4 archangels, the 4 elements, and the 4 elements are the foundation of physical reality. And then that's why we have 3 and then instantly 4, because in order for the third dimension to exist, it must be held in reality, physical reality, by the 4th dimension, because the 4th dimension is time. So in order for us to hold this physical third dimension, we need past and future and present to anchor in this. Okay. So I do believe that the archangels are the creators of reality. And so again, it makes sense that if Lucifer was one of these very high-ranking angels, he was able to create reality. So was it originally realities were created by these archangels, and then maybe an angel like Lucifer created aspects of this reality. And then that kind of gets to the idea of where some people believe that like this physical reality has like almost like an energetic net over it that allows for like bad things to happen, and souls. People believe in like the soul trap, white light soul trap, soul recycling, stuff like that. I don't personally believe in that, but I don't believe that it's a trap. I believe that it is free will that we choose to do it. It's just from this angle it looks like a trap because we're inside the game. Of course, if you were in a video game, you'd feel trapped in the video game, right? but the person playing the video game doesn't feel trapped in the video game because they're not. So, a system, not a trap. Yeah, there's a system, but really what it is okay, if Earth is a simulation, there's a simulation outside of that as well, which holds the outside. So we hold Earth. Outside of Earth is the outer realm, which is where, the other side is when you're dying, you reincarnate and the loved ones are, and then you get to cycle back in. So it's just another, yeah, I don't believe in the prison planet. Prison planet, I believe, is a very basic interpretation going through a very negative filter. How did you arrive at knowing that archangels create reality? So, first, for some reason, I had this idea. I think it might have been connected to the Urantia book. It is also what they kind of say in the Keys of Enoch, which I just got my copies of it from JJ and Desiree Hurtak. And I'm going to start reading it, but it's so dense. But I think that I got those concepts from that area originally because they kind of talk about like God splitting and it becomes like this kind of fanning out of energy. But then what really made me understand it was I had done a past life regression, a group one with Marcella Kroll, who, by the way, go watch the last episode of my podcast. She's the guest on my podcast. She's also the creator of the Sacred Symbols Oracle deck, and her book just came out today, February 11th, Healing the Liminal. So you can get that on Amazon and everything now. But Marcella, about a year or two ago, did a go to your first incarnation regression. And when I did that regression, my first incarnation was I saw source and it split into two and it became duality. And then it split to three, split to four. And then I saw that these were the archangels, but that these archangels were the four elements. And then these four elements became the creators of realities and the worlds within this universe. And what I had seen is that I was part of one of the four. Not that I'm an archangel. I am like 10 billion times removed from that. But it said go back to the first incarnation. And that was what I saw. And I saw that I was like one of them. I don't know which one though. I felt like it was like the one connected to fire, but I don't know. And I felt like, and then when I went under QHHT with Sarah Brexman Cosme, we asked about the angels. It said the same thing. And then it says something very similar in Keys of Enoch as well, that they are like world builders. So, but all of that, everything is up for interpretation to be expanded. You see them as sounds that organize reality and they could totally be archangels. Interesting. And that's the thing too, right? Is that talking about how angels are like around music. It's interesting. Lucifer being connected to music and angels and songs of angels and things like the harp and things, all of these things that are kind of connected to angels. Okay. So let's see. Okay. So then let's kind of get back to the devil stuff, right? Angels and devils. Let's get back to some of the devils. So, are these things satanic? Is there satanic stuff? So, everything is within creation. Everything is within creation. So, when we exile stuff away from ourselves, what we're doing is like, oh, that's not me. That's something else. That's something bad. Now, if you guys have ever read The Little Soul and the Sun by Neil Donald Walsh, it's the children's version of Conversations with God. And, very simply, the soul says, oh my God, I know what I am. I'm the light. And then God's like, okay, yes, you are the light. And then they're like, well, I want to experience myself as light. I don't want to just know I'm light. I want to be the light. I want to live as the light. I want to feel that I'm the light. And then how does one candle within the whole sun see the light that it is? It needs it needs a shadow to obscure it so that it can see its own bounds of what it is. So then another soul comes forward and says, I will be. Oh, okay. So then it says, what part of the light? God asks the soul, what part of the light do you want to be? And it says, I want to be the part of light that is forgiveness. And then the little soul is like, oh, why? Wait, how can I be the part that is forgiveness if I have nothing to forgive? This other soul comes forward and says, I'll be something for you to forgive, but I'm going to have to lower myself and make myself so dark and so dense to give you something to forgive. And that soul says, when I make myself so dark and so dense, I might forget my own light. So please, when I give you something to forgive, don't forget the light in me or I'll be lost. And then if I'm lost and you get lost in my darkness, then we're both lost. And then another soul is going to have to come and help us to see ourselves as the light again. And so that is what's happening as above, so below. So like this story of like Satan, of Lucifer, of the devil, of things like that. Obviously, Satan and Lucifer are like supposed to be different entities, but like of these things, these are aspects of consciousness that are brave enough to say, I'm going to make myself so dark and so dense so you can see your light. And don't forget my light or I'll forget myself. And this is what we're all doing for each other. You know, the person who lied to you, who cheated on you, who hurt you, who did this, who did that. Those are people. Those are little pieces of God's light that have made themselves so dense so that you can see your light, so that it's enough of a shadow so you can see who you are and feel who you are. But then we still need to be able to see the light in them so that they don't lose themselves as well. So that's kind of like as above, so below, what is happening with the devil, with Lucifer, with Satan, you know? And I know anybody who like clicked on this video randomly about like, oh, cool, it's going to be about the Illuminati and selling your soul. You know, we were going to get intellectual and esoteric, and everything is a part of the one. So like, it's very easy. You know, there's this Maya Angelou quote, which is, nothing human is alien to me. And until we understand that the person starting the wars, the person doing the genocide, the person raping, the person, the pedophile, the this, the that, the this, the that, these are all human. These are all what we are. And we can push everything away and say, that's not me. Oh, those celebrities, they're rotten. They're evil. They've sold their soul for money. They've sold their soul for fame. They're bad people. They're this, they're disgusting, all of this stuff. And then get so angry of like, oh, yeah, take them down, punish them, put them in jail. I mean, yeah, put them in jail because we want justice within this realm, right? But like all of this stuff, this hatred within us, okay, that's a mirror for you to see something within yourself. And it's like, I've said it before. If you're a good light worker, if you're a good Christian, if you're a good all the things, then you can see the light within that person. You can know that that person is also a part of God, a part of the one, and that they've just made themselves so dense, either because they got lost or because they were brave enough to do that. And that's how I feel about also the reptilian thing. You know, I used to believe in the reptilian thing of like, oh God, they're feeding on us. They're doing all this negative stuff. They've stuck us into a prison planet. They're feeding on our energy, our loosh. And now I'm like, oh, they are so fucking smart and so ascended that they are actually brave enough to play the game at such a high level to be the bad guy. You said that's what you can't accept. Kids should be off limits always. Of course they should. It's terrible. It's the most disgusting, horrible thing that could be. The stuff to kids is actually as bad as it could ever be. That's as dark as it gets. Because they're pure, because they're innocent, because they're the closest to God. You know, that's what happens when a child is born. It's God and the lineage coming together. But it doesn't mean that these things are right. It means that, how do we stop that cycle? How do we stop this pedophilic cycle in the world? The first step is loving all the parts of ourself, right? Accepting all the parts of ourself, accepting the parts of ourselves that have done the bad things. You know, most obviously, probably anybody here has never done anything that bad. But even the small things that we've done that we feel bad about, and heal these things within ourselves, accept the dark within ourselves, accept our own shadow. Then that gives us the depth, because they say you can only meet people to the level you've met yourself. You can only love people to the level you've loved yourself. So that is the first step. You know, you have to meet yourself in the trenches. You have to meet yourself in the darkness, in the dungeon, in, you know, the underworld. And then after you've been able to meet yourself within the underworld and say, wow, this part of myself, I can accept, I can love, I can understand this part of myself. I can understand why I did those things, why I acted that way. And sometimes those things are not against other people. Sometimes those things are what we've done to ourselves, maybe even more so than what we've done to other people. Because, you know, yes, everybody makes mistakes, but also there's a lot of people who are not doing that many bad things to other people, but they're doing bad stuff to themselves, either through addiction, through not allowing themselves to be happy, not allowing themselves to get what they deserve, for selling themselves short, for making decisions that harmed them, for accepting less than what they deserve. Those things are also in the trenches. It's not just what bad have I done to other people? What bad have I done to myself? When we start to see ourselves in those trenches and start to accept and see and love ourselves in those places, how do we love ourselves in those places? Well, why did I do it? I didn't know any better. That was the best I could do at the time. And when we understand that everybody is doing as best as they could do at every moment, it allows you to have a lot more compassion. You know, even someone who's like in their addiction, but then still continues to do the thing, still continues to drink, to this, to that. That's actually the best that they can do right now. And until we accept that also these bad people that are doing horrible things in the world, sadly, that's the best that they can do. Or even our parents, our caretakers, the ones who were supposed to be there for us, that was the best that they could do, which is not what we needed. We needed more than that. But then to be able to meet yourself at that level, then you can come up from those trenches and be able to start to meet other people at that level and be able to say, damn, that's horrible. That's wrong. There should be justice. You should be in jail. But I also see that you are a part of God, part of light that made itself so dense and got lost along the way. So, you know, this is when we talk about these conspiracies, it's very easy to get hyped up on, oh, the evils of the world. Oh, like we're going to, they're going to pay. They're going to pay for what they've done to us. But what part of you is doing that to yourself? It's all within creation. Every single thing is within creation. Nothing that we can experience is outside of creation, is outside of God, is outside of the universe. So when we do this to others, we say, oh, yeah, that person made a mistake. That person's bad. And we revel in that without compassion. Then we're doing that to ourselves, because everything is a reflection of us. And until we start to meet ourselves in those places and love those fractals of the self and go get that 360 of the personality, 360 of the soul, and start to retrieve those pieces. Now that could be inner child work. That could be parts work. That could be soul retrieval through a shamanic journeying. There's many different ways. You could do it through hypnosis. You can do it through meditation. You could do it through prayer. You could do it through asking God to help you, to show you, to guide you, whatever is your path of whatever you want to do. Or maybe you got to do, there's so many soul fractals splintered everywhere in every direction that you need a ton of different ways to do it. And that's okay. We start to pull those pieces back to the self and start to become whole again and pull them one by one back. And then all of a sudden we can be like, wow, you know, look at these celebrities who have made these bad decisions and say, if I was in their position, if it was my God-given right and gift to be Beyonce, to have Beyonce's voice, to have her star power, to have her magneticism at 16 years old, would you have been able to make the decision that your whole family is pressuring you to do of, no, I'm going to do the right thing. You think you're doing the right thing because someone is dangling your destiny in front of you. You know, what about like Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, all of these people? Like, would you be able to, if it was actually in front of your face, it's easy to say from this perspective, but if you were them with their lived experience, with all of the stuff that they've done, the work that they've done, would you turn down billions of dollars? Especially when you think that you're doing it for the right reasons? You know, and it's like, the more that we meet ourselves at these depths, the more that we can understand these decisions and why people made them. Oh, yeah, it shows us that for every yeah. Used to lash out at bullies and justified it, but learned it was bad. You were as bad as they were. You learned compassion for everybody. That's beautiful. In German, we have a word called, I'm gonna butcher it, Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude. It's a feeling of pleasure or satisfaction derived from someone else's misfortune because it's all in the self. Oh, that's I mean, honestly, German and Russian have so many words to describe things that are like outside of our language, which is interesting because Germans are not really like have the like identity of being like super emotional, but they have all these extra emotions because of these extra words that they're able to tap into. But then I think it's also the intellectual aspect of it, right? And that's why their mind is very further intellectual than a lot of other people because they have all these other words to define things that happen within us. You said German is actually really easy to learn. Maybe for you. No. Um, so, but also Russian too. Russian is very similar. Russian has a lot of these like extra words that are, I love them. I like love looking up like Russian words and German words that are not in English. Like there's this like Russian word that is like, it doesn't even have a definition. The way that people describe it is like being so like over the top with your wealth that you would pour expensive champagne into a hot tub. Like, and it's like this word of like excess wealth of like gluttonous wealth. And it's like, you know, like sometimes these words in other languages, it takes like a whole sentence to describe what it means. And that is also, you know, gives a lot of like emotional depth as well because there's more words to describe things, right? Even in some other languages, there's more words for love. In some languages, there's love for a partner, love for a parent, love for a child, love for the world, unconditional love, you know, like, but for in English, you know, we're very deprived of real love a lot of times because we only have like one word to describe it all. And, you know, it's so convoluted because that's also connected to sex. It's connected to romance. It's connected to self-worth. It's connected to all of these things. You know, it's all like in a knot. German is close to English, just got to sound it out and then you can generally understand. Yeah, I guess like when you sound it out, when you explain it as they thought they were doing right, it gives me more understanding than they were led astray. I think it's both. I think people are led astray you know? But they think they're doing the right thing at the same time, right? When someone is being led, they do usually think they're doing the right thing. That's where sometimes like cults or sometimes certain denominations of religions go too far. They think they're doing the right thing, right? Like sometimes in Christianity, they go so far that it becomes like a hate machine and everyone's a demon. But those people genuinely care and genuinely love God and genuinely want to do good and actually want good on the planet, but they've been led astray and they think they're doing the right thing. The same thing with, like terrorist organizations, right? Like those people are being led astray because they think they're doing the right thing for their religion, for their culture, for their country, you know? And in cults as well. People in cults believe like we're doing this for the ascension of the whole planet. So it's easy to be led astray, especially when people have good intentions. Oh, hey, Miracle. You guys got to listen to her songs, Sweat, and also Hardcore. I love it. I just listened right before coming on. Like Lucifer, some people may be held in a place by our expectations and assumptions of them. I agree with that too, right? So if like that's happening to like this entity that is so old and powerful, imagine what's happening to us, right? Is like then that kind of, and that's kind of I think what I'll end on with this live. So one of my favorite books is Grendel. I don't read fiction books very often, and so if you guys know the story of Beowulf. So Beowulf is like one of the oldest forms of literature written in an early form of English that had like ever been discovered. And it's this story of Beowulf, who is this hero. And then, he's like saving the kingdom and the castle and protecting everybody from this monster, Grendel. And Grendel, like every night, like comes in and like, fucks shit up. And so in the 70s, John Gardner wrote a book called Grendel, and it's from the perspective of the monster. And it's so beautiful because it's really like the existential crisis of a monster and experiencing itself through other people's perception. So this monster doesn't know it's a monster. It's just exploring. It's just different. It's just ugly because it's like a monster, right? And so it's doing the things. It has to have food. It has to do this. It's learning about itself. It's figuring things out. It's exploring. It sees this like village and castle and stuff. And it's like, what's that? And then the people are afraid because he looks different than them. And they're like, oh my God, monster, monster, monster. And then they start to tell the stories about the monster and what it's done. And then that's the only thing that he's ever known of himself. So it really kind of comes back to this concept of like, does a tree in the forest make a sound if nobody hears it? And that's how it is with the monster, is that it's like, am I anything? Until these people called me a monster. I didn't know what I was. I was just aimlessly roaming, exploring, seeing outside of myself. And now, because they called me a monster, now I know what I am. And then you have to live up to that. And also, like, too, that kind of like even kind of comes back to like Trump in a way, right? Like Trump being called all of these things that everybody called him almost created him to lean into that character and to become that thing more so. The same thing happens with everybody, every public figure, Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate becomes Andrew Tate because, sorry, got the captcha. Oh, dude, I told you, every week I can't do it in one try. Okay, there we go. So Andrew Tate becomes about like basically he's saying just like spewing stuff, playing this character, and then everybody's like, that's the worst misogynist woman hater monster in the world. And listen, I can't stand him. This is no defense to him, but we're talking about everything from a very compassionate lens here. So it's like he then becomes that monster more and more and more and more, just like Grendel in the book. So this past weekend, I was at Conscious Life Expo, and my friend Tony Ghazi, who I will have him on the podcast soon, he channels mantis beings. And one of the things that he said, people asked like, "Oh, do you channel anything besides mantis beings?" He said, "I'll channel anything that comes through." He's like, "I've channeled a rock." And someone raises their hand and they're like, "How do you channel a rock? What does a rock have to say?" And he was like, "What the rock has to say, quote unquote, doesn't say, but the rock experiences itself through us." So, if a rock is, if we see the rock as an inanimate object, it experiences itself as an inanimate object. If the rock, if we experience the rock and say, this is a part of consciousness, this is a part of God, this is made of the same thing that I'm made of, it experiences itself as a part of consciousness, as a part of the whole. Because this is a crystal, I'm like, oh, wow, this has special powers, magical powers. It experiences itself as having special powers, as having magical powers. So that goes on every level. Then I was talking about it after with him. And I was like, what you were saying about the rock, sometimes we'll talk about authenticity. There's people who are authentic. And then there's people who put themselves out there in these like spiritual spaces who are not authentic. And it's almost like, don't they realize that they're being full of shit right now? Like, can't they tell? Are they aware of that? And then we were like, well, actually, let's think about the rock, right? If the rock can experience itself through our perception of it, then this person who's maybe being inauthentic or, a grifter or a scammer or something, if enough people believe them, they're experiencing themselves as that thing. And then when a lot of people become aware of that person being inauthentic or aware of that person becoming a scammer or a grifter, do they then start to experiencing themselves in that way, where then they do start becoming more scammy, more grifty, more whatever, right? So then let's tie it back to the original topic of the celebrities, of the Illuminati stuff, of the selling your soul stuff, right? So right now, there's this collective awakening, and an awakening is when your perception goes from one awareness to another awareness, an expanded awareness. So when you go from one awareness to another awareness, it's like a brain bender, a mind fuck, a high, all of these things, and you blast through. So then now when you're outside on this awareness, you have a new lens that you experience reality through. You see everything through a different reality. So what is happening with these celebrities, right? Are they now like kind of playing up the more demonic stuff, right? Like look at someone like Doja Cat. I love Doja Cat. So like Doja Cat, she was doing her pop stuff that was probably contractual, but then everybody's like, she sold her soul, she sold her soul, she sold her soul. So then she experiences herself through that lens of others and is like, oh, like Grendel, if everybody's saying I'm a monster, let me be a monster. Because, and I mean, I love her too. Like, I think Doja Cat is like one of the coolest like pop stars. And that Demons video, I was like, damn, that was good as hell. That was scary. That was good. But then it's like, then she experiences herself through this narrative, Look at Britney Spears. Britney Spears is experiencing herself through what we are seeing of her. It wasn't until the mass collective started to say she's controlled, the conservatorship is controlling her, is this, did she be able to get the awareness to say, oh my God, I have to get out of this. How can I get out of this? Because she didn't know that anyone else knew what she was experiencing. If you read her book, she talks about how she had been in this conservatorship for over a decade, but then it wasn't until she was in that like facility that a nurse pulled her aside and said, I don't know if you know what's going on right now, but everybody on the internet is talking about free Britney. They want to free you. And she said that is what collectively shifted her to be able to start fighting to free herself when she saw that everybody else was able to free her. You know, everybody saw the problem she was in. And when she became aware of that awareness, she was able to then now get out of that. You said, I hope Brittany's okay right now. But then we go deeper into that concept right now. Now everybody's saying Brittany's not okay. Is she experiencing herself as not okay? Partly due to that. And of course, there's co-creation of everything. It's not that simple. And then, like, I think the last thing that I want to talk about is the soul contracts. So Lee Harris, who also, you guys, I met him at Conscious Life Expo, and he said he'll do my podcast. And so that'll be coming up soon. I haven't recorded it yet. But Lee Harris had channeled that every single celebrity has a contract with everybody who is impacted by them. So it's like a light contract. It's not as much of the soul contract as like your soulmate or as your parents or as your children, but there's light. You said, is this being recorded? It's on my YouTube. So it's up right now and you can watch the replay. Have you seen these Hollywood contracts? Well, it is interesting. The contracts, there is contracts in the physical, but we're talking about soul contracts. So Britney Spears has a soul contract with everybody who's been impacted by her, with anybody who has listened to her music, who has, you know, any of these things. Like, now we wonder too, everybody is a mirror, is a lesson, is on some journey. And these people who are positioned into these high places, these people who are positioned to be a mirror, a reflection for all of us, like a Britney Spears. Does Britney have some type of, first of all, we know she has a soul contract with all of us. However, does she have a contract that is something about freedom, something about exposing, something about seeing the truth, something about liberation, something about women? What is the lesson that she is teaching us on a collective level? What about Diddy? What about, you know, Diddy right now? When we look on a higher perspective, an expanded perspective, what is Diddy teaching us right now? Is part of Diddy's soul contract to show us the darkness that is on this planet? And if we see all these people as teachers, you know, sometimes, you know, in like the spiritual spaces, you know, we have like our teachers that are like early on in our journey, and then you grow beyond that knowledge. Sometimes I see people get mad at those teachers because they grew beyond the expanded knowledge that the teacher was teaching. And now they're like, that person's fake, that person's this, that person's wrong. But everybody needs to go to first grade. And in outside of this, like spiritual places, we don't look back at our first grade teacher and like, that freaking bitch was wrong. You know, when you're in college and you've learned quantum mechanics, you're not looking at your physics teacher from high school and being like, screw them, grifter, scammer, piece of shit, you know? And like, so that happens in the spiritual space, though, is that when our knowledge expands, I'm guilty of this as well. As our knowledge expands, we look at those old teachers and like, they're wrong. And so yours was Wayne Dyer, sorry. You said Dwayne, but I was like, why is it sounding wrong to me? No, yeah, Wayne Dyer. But you still cherish him. Jay Shetty, exactly. Like a lot of people who love Jay Shetty then have now turned on Jay Shetty. It happens all the time. It happens with everything. I used to love them, but now I don't. We see it in the comments of everything. I mean, people comment on my stuff all the time. I used to love your stuff, but now, you know? And so, but what about if we took that perspective with these celebrities, right? And really look at these people as our teachers. What is Diddy teaching us? What is Britney teaching us? What is Madonna teaching us? What is Lady Gaga teaching us? Not just like, oh, you know, teaching like Lady Gaga's teaching us self-acceptance. You know, no, the deeper, higher level. What is Lady Gaga teaching us, right? She's doing like the demonic dances and like the fame monster stuff and like things like that. And it's like, are they teaching us something about our own shadow? Are they teaching us something about our own darkness? And then if we start to see these people as our teachers, as our reflections, comes back to the little soul in the sun. where that soul says, I will help you see yourself as forgiveness, but I need to make myself so dark and dense that I might lose myself. So I need you to see me as the light still, even when I'm bad, even when I'm wrong, even when I'm dense, even when I'm hurting people, when I'm doing the wrong thing. You can still see the light and still see God within me, so I don't lose myself. It comes back to the experiencing yourself through others, right? So if we look at someone like Diddy and is like, yeah, sure, all the things he did is fucking terrible and horrible, but he gave us a great gift. I've been down these rabbit holes. I've been a conspiracy theorist for so long. I've been worried about the darkness and the world and the dark forces and the devils and the demons and the reptilians and all the stuff. But now I'm like, oh, with this more expanded perspective that I've gained over these years, I'm like, oh, wow. I'm grateful to Diddy for getting caught, for going to jail. Look at Harvey Weinstein. You guys know my whole history with Harvey Weinstein. Like, Harvey Weinstein, thank God. He had this contract with humanity to be, the what is it? The straw that broke the camel's back, right? Diddy is the straw that breaks the camel's back. And if we start to see these people as, oh, there's still God within them, there's still light within them, there's still a reflection within them that wants to see the greed and the sex demons and the stuff and all the stuff that is inside of us, that is inside of humanity, and lets us see it and brings it to the light and exposes it, then we can honor them as a teacher and allow them to see themselves and allow their soul to not be lost anymore. Be careful with this crystal in my hand. You are a synchronist. Beautiful. I don't know what that means, but thank you. But Clive Davis put him in the broken straw position. Yeah, that's true. I agree. They are the catalyst for uncovering dark. Beautiful. Beautiful, you guys. Okay, I think I'm done for the night. Abraham Hicks was your gateway channeler. You wouldn't be there without them. Right, exactly. Brittany was taken when she was very young. It's not her real name, but we'll disclose. Okay. Carl Jung's theory on the thought collective. Beautiful. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for being here for the Tuesday Night Live. Okay, before we go, my podcast, next episode is coming out Thursday on YouTube. We are going to have, you guys know I love this Animal Apothecary deck by Cara Elizabeth. And we are going to be interviewing Cara Elizabeth. And she has actually some really interesting stuff to say. Not exactly on this topic, but in a related way, where her own abuse as a child, her own sexual trauma that she had experienced as a child, actually had her go through this journey of healing that was like this. It was like a pit that wasn't being healed. And it wasn't until she learned to heal and channel that energy, and she created this deck, which is a medicine for everybody else, including a medicine for her. It's a really beautiful story and really beautiful about her healing journey and how it became this oracle deck. And it really ties into like what we're saying on the positive end of like those parts of ourselves that are fractalized. What if instead of it becoming a demon that takes the front seat, we allow it to be the artist that it is. We allow it to be the creator that it is. And we keep it in a place that it can flourish and grow and be healed. So this Thursday, 11 a.m., go check out my interview with Cara Elizabeth. It will be on my YouTube. And then the following week, I'm going to start putting them on Spotify, iTunes, and all of that. I wanted my 3 episodes of my podcast up before I launched it onto audio platforms. So everybody make sure you go and do that. Like the live while you're here. Follow me on Instagram because I do on Tuesdays, not every Tuesday, but most Tuesdays now, I'll just put like a poll up and see what topics people want to talk about. And then you guys get to pick the topic. So we will see you guys next Tuesday and on Thursday. And thank you so much. Psychically Gifted on YouTube. Is that who you are? Okay, guys, thanks for being here. Love you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, beautiful. Mm.